Hello, everyone. Welcome, all of you in the room and everyone online. Welcome to this press briefing by the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. My name is Alexandra Sasha Gorishek. I'm the Communications Director for IFRC, and I'll be moderating this briefing. It is really my great honor today to introduce to you Mr. Jagan Chapagain, the CEO and Secretary General of the IFRC, as well as Mr. Dylan Winder, who is our permanent observer here to the United Nations in New York. And you will be able to meet him afterwards and reach out to him in the future. So we're very happy to have him here today. So without any further ado, I'll just pass on to you, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you, Sasa. Is it okay? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sasa, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm here today with a very special ask of you. So generally, I know a journalist, you are the one to ask the question. But today, I have a very special ask from you at the end. I would like to start by talking about Hedaya Hamad. I don't know whether we can get her photo on the screen. Can we?
Carlos, can we get the image up on the screen, please?
Hedaya Hamad.
There it is. We have
There it is. She was the director of the Youth and Volunteers Department at the Palestinian Red Crescent Society in Gaza. A mentor to hundreds, a source of support and strength to many of her colleagues. But as you no doubt have already guessed, as I use the word was, Hedaya Hamad is no longer alive. She was shot dead in February while working, while helping others who were sheltering at the Palestinian Red Crescent headquarters within the Al-Amal hospital in Khan Yunis. That morning, she had promised her colleagues she would prepare them breakfast. This is what she used to do many days. It was the only time she could not keep her promise. Of course, and devastatingly, Hedaya Hamad is just one human tragedy of far too many this year. Since January, 30 Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers and staff members have been killed while on duty, while wearing Red Cross and Red Crescent emblems. Under the Geneva Conventions, they have a protective value. Most, 17, were killed in Palestine, 8 in Sudan. Of the 30, 27 died violently rather than just in accidents. These are, of course, awful numbers, but I also want to draw attention to something else. All of our staff and volunteers killed were those sometimes called the local staff members, the locals, the nationals. That's to say, they belong to the National Red Cross or Red Crescent Society in the place in which they were killed. We proud ourselves that most people in our network are members of communities they serve, 16.5 million volunteers. They come from their communities, where they also work. But unfortunately, it is they who are being hurt and killed the most. We have been very fortunate that this year we haven't lost any of our internationally deployed colleagues who get deployed to support the action of the local Red Cross. Of course, that's partially good news. We are heartened by it. But the relative safety of international workers only underlines how dangerous things have become for nationals. And this contrast is stark. Nor is this discrepancy unique to only my organization. It's true across all the humanitarian sector. International aid workers have been injured or killed this year, but the greatest dangers are to local or national staff and volunteers across the board. So far in 2024, the aid workers security database records 220 humanitarian workers who have been killed. Of those 220 people who were killed, about 207, or 94%, were local, from the communities, from the countries they came from. 2024 has been a particularly brutal year, on track to be the worst ever for humanitarian workers. It's been true for the last 10 years, since 2014, that 95% of the humanitarian workers reported killed have been the national staff. 95% for the last 10 years. So this year, from that point of view, hasn't been any different. But, colleagues, you would not know this from the news. The death of international humanitarian worker gets far, far more coverage than the deaths of local. When a convoy of cars was hit in April with the 6 international humanitarians on board and 1 national Palestinian, all killed, the world was shocked. We counted at least 25,000 media articles that mention that death. Quite right. They deserve to have 25,000 media articles. And it was, of course, very shocking. But when 4 Palestinian Red Crescent Society volunteers, the national volunteers, were killed in a similarly awful attack, there was much less attention. There were not 25,000 articles. There were less than 50. So it's no exaggeration to say the deaths of international humanitarians are getting 500 times more media coverage than the deaths of nationals. So 95% of the humanitarians killed were nationals, but the attention they were getting, the ratio was 1 to 500. And colleagues, that's why I'm here. This needs to change. We need to be equally appalled by attacks on both nationals and internationals. It doesn't matter. The humanitarians must be sacred. It should not matter whether you come locally or you come internationally. You work for big international organization or you work for small local organizations. You are humanitarian and your human values should be equal. And at the moment, the statistics I shared with you, unfortunately, is not the case. As you know, the national humanitarians have access. They come from the communities. They don't need visa. They don't need to travel for days or weeks to be there. And as they come from the communities, a lot of time they are trusted. They know the people. They know the people affected. They know the actors on the ground. And for any humanitarian action to be successful, to be efficient, to be effective, the role of these local humanitarians is paramount. I think if you look at my organization, the IFRC, as a network, 191 national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, we have only 2,000 staff as part of the International Federation. We have 650,000 staffs, local staff, employed by our members, and 16.5 million volunteers from the communities. This is the statistics we have. So meaning that the work we do is largely carried out by those local humanitarians. And at the moment, their life is not safe. They are in danger. Their families are not safe. And unfortunately, they cannot leave. Internationals can be evacuated, can leave the country. As nationals, they cannot leave. So colleagues, I'm here today because all our efforts, not only this year, also previous years, to bring attention to the risks the humanitarians are facing, and particularly the local humanitarians are facing, haven't been successful. It hasn't worked. We have pleaded, we have requested, we have shouted at times. None of that has clearly worked because the number of humanitarians killed keeps on increasing. So that's why I'm here, because we need help. We need help from the governments and others to make sure that the local humanitarian workers are protected and the people or the institution whose actions lead to the killing of the humanitarians are somehow influenced to stop that. And we also need help from you. The media should cover these stories. You have a very powerful voice. You reach millions of people every day. And your voice does make a difference. When the internationals were killed in Gaza, you did manage to make that a major story in a very short period of time. And because of that, some governments have started taking some initiatives. So if you do the same, every time a humanitarian gets killed, I believe we can turn the needle. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Secretary General, for this sobering message, and I truly hope that we can work together on sharing it further. Now, over to you. If you have a question, please identify yourself and your media outlet, and there's a microphone to your left or right, not sure. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Me or?
The one behind you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim, Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I have first a follow-up on the issue you described about the double standards regarding the way the killing of national staff being reported compared to international staff. Why do you think this is happening? And do you see this happening mainly in Western media or also in media in different non-Western media in the Global South too? And the other question is regarding the occupied Palestinian territories. And you know, there's detention centers by Israelis in which there are thousands of Palestinians who are being detained there. And the question is whether your organization on the ground was able to enter these centers, to look into the accusation of torture and sexual abuse, etc. And sorry, last thing on Sudan, to which obstacle you are facing there, you know, when it comes to access. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shall we? I think your first questions, I will be very honest with you, I don't know why. I don't know the real reason why the killing of the local humanitarian doesn't get any attention compared to internationals getting killed. And that's where I'm appealing to you. We got to change it. We got to change it. I think the coverage point of view, I gave you the statistics, 25,000 versus 50. So that means it's global. I don't think it's only Western in that sense, that if we just got 50 versus 2,500. So I think it's a global phenomenon. That's how I see it. And I think we got to change it everywhere if we are to make a difference. On the issue of the detention center, as you know, I represent the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. As you know, in Red Cross family, we also have the International Committee of the Red Cross. We have our areas of responsibilities. Basically, the visiting of the prisoners of wars, that sort of falls on the mandate of our friends in the ICRC. But here, one thing I do want to highlight, even though it's not our mandate, I do want to highlight that the access to detention facilities or the prisons depends on the authorities who control them. As Red Cross or any other organizations, there is no free pass to enter these facilities. So sometimes I do hear some of the criticism that these places are not visited. It's not because that the organizations don't want to visit, but they got to get the permission to visit them. And sometimes when some of these discussions happened in the public discourse, some of these very delicate negotiations that need to take place to get the access gets affected. So that's also another area of sensitivity we need to demonstrate in some of these very delicate negotiations. Now, on the issue of Sudan, I think the issue of access is mainly because of the insecurity that is prevailing. Of course, the Sudanese Red Crescent, before the current round of conflict started, has had a quite extensive network, the branch networks, and they're actually active in all the provinces, and those networks are still active. But the challenge is their capacity to respond has been overwhelmed with the type of displacement that has happened both internally and, of course, the people leaving the country. So their capacity has been severely overwhelmed. Now, to help them to continue their work, there has to be access coming now primarily from Port Sudan, because from Khartoum it's been much harder. And those access issues primarily linked to the insecurity has been the major challenge when it comes to Sudan.
Thank you. Silvina?
Thank you. Secretary General, my name is Silvina Sterin-Pencil. I work for Radio France International. Thank you for this press briefing. So you told us that most of the workers and the voluntary personnel who was killed were easily identifiable as members of the International Red Cross Federation. And that is a crime, a recognizable crime. And that is often the case, even with the international people that you were mentioning were so widely covered. So there's a sense of frustration that even in the face of these recognizable crimes, the UN that is now celebrating or hosting this 79th edition of the UNGA has limited reach. There's not much that the institution can do. Do you share this frustration, and what is your honest opinion about this? What can be done, or is it even helpful that we're here? Thank you.
No, thank you. It's a very important question. As you know, the UN has also lost large number of their local staff. So in this context, I think we are not very different in that sense, that we have lost our national humanitarian workers. Now, I don't know whether I want to use the word frustration here, but I do get a sense of helplessness that this has happened. These are the people whose sole purpose is to help someone else. And a lot of times they are just volunteers, you know. They are not even getting paid the regular salaries. They are simply motivated to help another human being and helping another human life. And when they get killed in the mission, when they were fully identifiable, and there is not the type of outcry that is needed to change the needle, I do feel a sense of helplessness. And that's why I took this step to come in front of you, because we clearly haven't managed to create the type of pressure, if I can use that word, to bring this to the attention to the authorities and the governments who has the power to make a difference. And here, the few things I believe that could be done is clearly the people who have the power to take decisions and influence, I think, need to start taking this much more seriously. A lot of time, you know, the multilateral forums themselves are the manifestation of the member states. And ultimately, the decision is taken by the member states. And until and unless the member states or the governments are taking these issues seriously and exercising these multilateral forums that exist, but also exercising their bilateral influence, the change will be much, much harder. So that's, I think, the key ask from our point of view is let the government take this very, very seriously. The second thing is clearly the international humanitarian law forbids the attack on the Red Cross or Red Crescent emblems, the Geneva Conventions. They were created to protect the humanitarians, the medical personnel, working in this type of situation. And clearly, over many years, there has been an erosion on that protective value of our emblems, and of course there are other the organizations with a similar protection. So clearly that erosion that is taking place has to be reversed, and that's where the role of the government, the media, and of course the organizations like the UN and ourselves come into play. So the government taking the ownership and the leadership on influence, but also looking towards ensuring accountability when the Geneva Convention are openly violated, and using the existing forums to bring accountability. I think clearly the media, the utilizing the power of media, and also somehow helping us when we launch some of these campaigns. Right now, Sasha is helping us lead a campaign, the Protect Humanity campaign from ourselves. So if we can create that momentum globally, hopefully it will create the moral pressure also to change the current trend, very unfortunate trend of attack on humanitarians. So I think this is probably a combination of multiple actions that needs to come together to change it, rather than one single action that could make a difference.
Thank you. You, please.
Just to follow up on what she asked, and sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I'm not so clear.
Can you use the mic next to you?
Yeah, just to follow up on what she asked, and sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I'm not so clear on what you think about this current conference that's happening. A lot of the players that are supposed to ensure that actors adhere to international humanitarian laws are here. We've had speeches from, some of, state leaders. Do you see any goodwill? Do you think there's going to be any change after this conference?
Now, I wish there is a change. Just yesterday, I took part in a conversation together with a number of other heads of agencies with a government leader. I don't know whether I should disclose it or not, but let me give them the opportunity to announce what they have in their mind. And we had a very serious conversation from one very influential government who have taken this quite seriously. And following the conversation yesterday, I think I can mention it's Australian government. Following the conversation we had yesterday, they have expressed a huge commitment to work with other governments to bring this issue very much on the fore. And they have extended the invitation to work with us, including a number of big UN agencies, ourselves, the Red Cross, Red Crescent Movement family, and some other INGOs. So will there be a flip and everything will change after this conference? Most likely not. But I'm really hoping that this conversation, which started yesterday with the Australian government, will be taken up by a number of other governments, and it will lead to a coalition of the governments who can push some of the changes. So I'm hopeful, but I'm not so sure whether the change will come quickly enough for the people who are dying already on the ground. So the change has to happen much faster.
Thank you. Paz Blue.
Thank you. It's Pamela Falk from
sorry.
US News.
Sorry, it's Paz Blue first.
Hi, my name is Joe Penny. So according to the New York Times, the United Arab Emirates is using the Red Crescent as a cover for its secret operation to fly drones into Sudan and smuggle weapons to RSF fighters. And it also stated that the Emirates Red Crescents did not inform the International Federation that it was setting up a hospital in Amjaras, Chad. Can you comment on this?
Of course, that was not the topic for today's conversation. I really want today's focus to be on the local humanitarians who have been killed. And we really need to turn the page there. And I would really like to request you that there could be other opportunities to discuss some of these issues. But as you have asked the question, we have read that report. We have been, and there is also some additional reports, not only New York Times. We have been trying to get to the bottom of it because the information is out there, and I don't want to make more definitive comment until we have got to the bottom of the issues. You are right that the setting of the hospital was not informed to us, but this is not unique in the sense that a number of our national societies do operate programs on a bilateral basis, and they don't always inform us. So it, just from the point of view of not informing, is not uniquely unique. Of course, we prefer that we are informed of all these bilateral operations. So on this particular topic, that any such allegations, we take it very, very seriously, and we are also taking this very seriously. But at the moment, we are trying to get to the bottom of it. So I will not say more than that until we have more definitive information we can get also from the United Arab Red Crescent. Yeah. But my request is, let's try to focus on the people today. That's my request, please.
Please, over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry for the previous. It's Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. My question, twofold. One is a follow-up on the earlier question. Do you foresee any meetings during UNGA 79 and in which you could negotiate more humanitarian aid and access? And the main question is, you have facilitated some of the hostage and prisoner exchanges. Is there anything current in terms of the Red Cross and the IFRC seeing any of the hostages that are still being held? Thank you.
On your second question, as I was explaining earlier, even in the Red Cross, we have two institutions. So it's the International Committee of the Red Cross who had facilitated the exchange of the prisoners, not the IFRC. But I can say that if the parties to the conflict come to an agreement, I'm sure the ICRC will offer its good offices to facilitate the exchange.
But in the meantime, there's been no access to hostages, correct?
As far as I know, no.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I think on your first question, of course, as you know, the UNGA, so there are many meetings are happening in a smaller group and in a bigger group. And of course, we are using every opportunity to highlight this issue. We generally don't go public with our issues. Today we are. Generally, we like to have more quiet and confidential diplomacy, and that we continue to do. Both on the protection side, also on the access side, and also on the resourcing side, because all these three are sort of interlinked to change any humanitarian situation on the ground. So these things are happening right now. But I also have to admit, and I'm sure you have seen this many reports from also many other organizations, that the humanitarian funding has shrunk significantly this year for various reasons. I think clearly the impact of the COVID-19 on the economies of many of our donors, that I think continues to impact, but also just the proliferation of the disasters and crises and the conflicts, meaning that much more crises are requiring international assistance. So that means the finite resources available is simply not enough. So these are sort of the ongoing conversation that is happening. And for IFRC, that's the reason we take this approach of localization, meaning that using the local capacity and local resources to try to reach the people who need humanitarian assistance. This is good, this is sustainable, but this is also financially, it makes much more sense. And that's why we champion this notion of localization. It's good and it makes financial sense. So what else you need. Yeah.
Hi, it's Simon Lewis from Reuters. Just to follow up on a couple of points. You mentioned, I think, 17 of the Red Crescent, Red Cross staff who've been killed in Palestine. I don't think you've made reference to Israel during your comments, so I wondered if you could sort of say specifically, what your this is a result of Israel not sufficiently distinguishing or taking care to not to harm humanitarian workers. That seems to be what you're saying, but I sort of would be interested for you to say it a little bit more directly, if possible. And just on the point about, you're appealing for obviously the media to make more of a fuss about local humanitarians being killed. I just wanted to make the point that with the World Central Kitchen killings, there was obviously, and I think that's what you were referring to, that there was a big outrage and governments did take action. But I'm wondering, just to follow that point on, did the reaction to the World Central Kitchen incident make humanitarians in Gaza safer? I think some of these deaths have happened since then. Did that actually have an impact on safety for humanitarians? Thanks.
The most important thing was the message was understood. And you clearly understood the message. I think, as I mentioned earlier, in the Red Cross, we are not in the habit of publicly naming or shaming. I think as long as the message is understood, for us, that's good enough. Of course, we do have a very robust bilateral and confidential discussions, and we continue to do that. I think the incident of the World Kitchen you described, I think what we believe is that the outrage that came out of that incident clearly did bring the issue on the fore. And I believe that outrage was helpful to bring the issue on the table. But what happened was then it dropped. It dropped massively. And sometimes to bring about the change, there has to be a sustained campaign, a sustained media campaign also. So that's why what we're really asking is to have that sustained campaign whenever an innocent humanitarian on humanitarian missions get killed. But what happened, the response to World Kitchen incident, I think helped at least bring up the issue, although short-lived.
Back here.
Hello, Ilgin Yorulmaz. I'm a freelance journalist from Turkey. Thank you very much for today. Can I just ask the legal status of these humanitarian workers? Is there an investigation once this kind of atrocity happens? And do you have any dual nationals on your staff, as your staff? What I mean is sometimes these humanitarian workers or peace activists have dual nationalities, and that sort of amplifies the issue. And finally, news from Gaza and other parts of Palestine is very limited. And Israel has just closed down Al Jazeera, as we know, the branch in Ramallah. Do your humanitarian workers use social media like we have had in this Israel-Hamas conflict, what's called Instagram journalists, people actually broadcasting on Instagram, which made a huge difference. I know you're saying it has to be quiet diplomacy and everything, but I think you also, as an organization, may try to amplify your existence. Thanks.
Actually, we do. So this is my invitation to follow us on our social media platforms, including the Palestinian Red Crescent. I think they have been very, very prompt in sharing these issues. So that's why I use the word helplessness, because everything we are doing is not making impact. So I invite you to follow us. We do that, and Palestinian Red Crescent constantly update on a daily basis what they see on the humanitarian side, because our focus is very much on the humanitarian impact of the conflict, and we do that regularly. We do that absolutely regularly. Our spokesperson is on the news literally every day to highlight the humanitarian impact. So that is very much there. Now, on the issue of the dual nationality, I really have to check it. None has come to my attention that they had a dual nationality. I think they were all a single nationality of the countries where they were killed. My colleagues is hinting that none actually had a dual nationality there. Now, on the issue of what the legal framework could be on these issues, that's something I will have to look at. But of course, as a Red Cross, we don't have a legal mechanism to make any party to the conflict accountable in a legal sense, in a sense of a court of law. So we, as far as I know, I really don't think we have that. But that's why we're trying to exercise the moral pressure. And the other institutions that exist in the world who may have a degree of legal framework, I hope they will pursue it, if it makes sense legally.
Yeah. Hello, sir. I'm Ayush Garg from the Indian Press. I have two questions, basically. One is that apart from Gaza and Ukraine, a lot of other conflicts are there in the world today, like Myanmar, Yemen, which are completely off the radar, with absolutely no coverage at all in terms of the press, we can call it. So what are the kind of messages you're getting from the ground, from your volunteers in these conflicts? And what is the situation that the IFRC sees happening in such situations? The second question is regarding these regular appeals that both the Red Cross and IFRC has made on regular basis in regards to the safety of humanitarian workers on the ground. Are you thinking that since these appeals have largely been ignored in certain conflicts, are you thinking of stronger steps and measures, perhaps joining the case at the ICJ or the ICC, where war crimes and crimes against humanity or genocidal conventions are being discussed in terms of protecting your own workers and taking a stand for them in terms of the legal stature?
I think on your second questions, I think we let the institutions do their job. I think they are fully capable of doing their mandate. So I don't see us joining or not joining. I think they have their mandate, they continue to do their job, and we leave it to them to do their job. On your first question, you are absolutely right. I think clearly Ukraine and Gaza get the bulk of the attention. Sudan gets attention once in a while. But of course, there are multiple other crises in the world. They don't get the type of attention largely in the media, including social media. But not for us. If you follow us, you will find that we highlight all these crises, from Myanmar to Afghanistan. I mean, if you look at the media, Afghanistan problem is solved. You hardly see them, even in the 16th pages there. It's not. The humanitarian situation is getting worse. The other Middle East situation, Yemen, Syria, Libya, they haven't been resolved. And then I just returned from Sahel a few weeks ago. So there are multiple other crises that don't get the attention. And that's where, at least from the humanitarian point of view, we do our best to highlight them through our updates, through our social media accounts, through our appeals, the emergency appeals we do. We constantly do that, and we also do it on bilateral basis, when we have these engagements. And we do make some headway there and not much headway in other places. And that's why I think we really need your help on not letting some of the other crises disappear from the radar screen.
I think we can take one last question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Haneen, journalist from Palestine, DAG fellow. There's some frustration among Palestinians about the Red Cross's rule to check and document what's happening with Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Are you working to follow up on the dire situation, especially after 7 October?
Yeah, again, as I was highlighting that, as you know, in Red Cross we have two components, the ICRC and the IFRC. The question you raised falls in the mandate of the ICRC, not on the mandate of the IFRC. So I would let the ICRC colleagues to respond to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary General. And again, if I may introduce again my colleague Dylan Winder. He's our permanent observer here in New York. Please reach out to him in the future. And thank you all for coming. And I hope we can count on you on covering our stories. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.